Why did Choctaw Indians look like Negroes in the mid-1800s? One of the most historic Cherokee surnames is Bushyhead. I'm a product of 400 years of French native marriages. That's the one-drop rule. The one-drop rule applied to Indians. Jack D. Forbes started questioning whether Amerindian blood was ancestrally African.
Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Wake up out of your sleep!
On the internet, Native Americans ridicule black people who claim indigenous heritage, whether we have our tribal card or not. But they do this because they're offended by our claims about their identity. Some of us claim that they're Siberians who took land from black people before the Europeans arrived. Others, like myself, simply argue that they're multi-generationally mixed, black and white. They insist that they're neither black nor white, but they often gloss over their mixed ancestry, which is why we're about to see what they say when they're just talking amongst themselves. What'll interest you most will be how much they actually admit that they don't look like their ancestors. This isn't for some kind of gotcha moment on Native Americans. I just think it's important for us as black people rediscovering our Indian roots to understand how Native Americans see themselves and see us. Our community has to learn to empathize with their community. But to do that, we also have to learn the history from their perspective. Keep in mind, part of why this matters is because there's ample reason to believe that American Indians were originally just Negroes. Let's not forget that Jack D. Forbes, the most revered Native American historian in U.S. history, once said, quote, "If we have African blood, we should be proud of it. It is good, honest, tribal ancestry," end quote. We can find that quote in many places, including ICT News. Now, why would one of the most knowledgeable historians even bother to say this? Well, actually, Jack D. Forbes started questioning whether Amerindian blood was ancestrally African because his own research led him to realize that his pre-Columbian ancestors were black. Forbes himself was Lenape Indian, yet he published a book in 1993 called Africans and Native Americans: The Language of Race and the Evolution of Red-Black Peoples. Page 71 lists several examples of Europeans calling Indians Negroes. After a slew of examples, he says, quote, "Thus, Negro is used for Indian, not for someone from Africa," end quote. He goes on to say all the Portuguese, Spaniards, and Italians who came to the Americas were on one accord on this, which suggests that the majority consensus was that American Indians were black, since that's what negro means. My point is that Native American experts have long recalled that the American Indians were black. But today, we're not looking for experts. We're looking for the lay perspective among common Native Americans.
There were only 8% of the slaves that came to America. So how is it that there are so many more people that they claim are black or African American? I think they got the numbers wrong, because a lot of Native Americans are the ones that they're counting as black folks too.
Heads up for all Unehiya stakeholders. Unehiya just launched a brand new content series to which you now have exclusive access. Some of you know this since you've already watched episode 1 of the Copper Mining series, where we're mining for all the copper nuggets that prove who the copper-colored Aborigines are. More specifically, this series deals directly with the documentation in the memorandum that Unehiya is taking to Congress. To catch the first episode of this new series, click the link in the description box and become a stakeholder. And here's a sneak peek from the first episode, which is all about the study Unehiya just conducted using a computer simulation of the African birth rate during the slave trade. Check it out.
Unehiya presents PopSim, the Unehiya Population Simulator. The results might shock you.
Try to count how many dots come to North America.
It is known that some Native American women bought male slaves, then freed them, married them, and then their children were born free according to the laws in the 18th century.
The legal memo.
So a year ago on Quora, somebody asked, why did Choctaw Indians look like Negroes in the mid-1800s and today they look like Europeans mixed with Asian? Valid question. In the Webster Dictionary from 1828, it said they were brown-skinned people. How did they change to a whole new-looking race of people? End quote. Now, it could be that a black person pinned the question. Could be a white person, we don't know. But we're going to read the first couple responses and move on. The first one from Ashley Tarver is quite interesting. Quote, some Choctaw squaws indeed looked like African American women. My great-great-grandmother was Choctaw, and she married my great-great-grandfather who was a white man. She was arrested in the state of Alabama, which was only a territory at the time, for marrying a white man. She had to take 1.5 to 2 feet, yes, feet, of her hair as evidence into court. The judge and jurors determined she was a Choctaw squaw, unmarried Indian woman, and not a Negro. This was based on her hair texture. It was straight and not kinky. It wasn't illegal to marry Native Americans. She did look like an African American woman. I have the news article from archives that I found once I started digging into my maternal and paternal family history. It all started with the ancestry kit my husband gave me for Christmas. Best gift ever. End quote. So Ashley Tarver is likely a white woman who discovered a Choctaw ancestor and was surprised to feel like that great-great-grandmother had Negro features. She includes a photo, and we're looking at what some might view as a high yellow mulatto woman attempting to pass for white. This is largely based on the shape of her nose and somewhat thick lips. Because the photo's unclear, you might not notice at first how thick that bottom lip actually is. Take a better look. Also, early photography greatly obscured complexion because the bright flashes would make everyone look lighter. Regardless, I'm more interested in what she mentions about due process requiring this Choctaw woman to submit locks of her hair as evidence to prove she was Indian. This was actually a common issue in the early 1900s and late 1800s. Keep in mind that by the time you reach the late 1800s, Indians had already done so much mixing with white people that we had created a third race of multi-generationally mixed people. Many of them still looked like light-skinned black people, which is common for mixed people. In this period of U.S. history, white people were constantly struggling to distinguish mixed Indians from full-blood Indians. And in an upcoming presentation, I'll be showing you how we know those full-blood Indians were blacks as we trace the paper trail left behind by the colored population of the 1800s. But for now, we're going to drum up the proof on the white struggle to separate Indian identity from its Negro phenotype. This hair test is one of those. in 2004, Volume 10 of the Michigan Journal of Race and Law published a peer-reviewed study by University of Illinois research professor Terrian Williamson. The study's entitled "The Plight of Nappy-headed Indians: The Role of Tribal Sovereignty in the Systematic Discrimination Against Black Freedmen by the Federal Government and Native American Tribes." In my upcoming presentation on the paper trails of the colored population, we'll see that most proof of indigenous bloodlines for so-called Indian freedmen or black freedmen was systemically erased. But for now, let's look at the last paragraph of page 254, which bleeds on to page 255. Quote, "The BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs, the BIA has been a leader in using blood quantum requirements to determine eligibility for federal benefits. The BIA has also relied disproportionately on physical characteristics to determine blood quanta. For example, during the 1930s, the BIA sent a Harvard anthropologist to North Carolina to determine whether the Lumbee group was actually Indian. The anthropologist's method of determination was to place a pencil in each person's hair, noting Indian if the pencil slipped through the hair and Negroid if it did not." End quote. If you're reading between the lines, they wouldn't word it this way unless a sizable contingent of Lumbee Indians were failing the pencil test. Why would some Lumbee have nappy hair and others not? Because the tribe was gradually getting whited out by mixing with colonizers. This is miscegenation, destruction by way of consumption. You are consumed by the colonizer who marries into your tribe repeatedly until you lose yourself in them. Europeans eventually outnumbered us because an entire subcontinent of them was rapidly emptying into our lands. Many tribes have phenotypic traces of blackness like that. Dr. Giraldo is a Lumbee Indian who serves as director of the American Indian Center at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a former researcher for the Native Nations Institute at the University of Arizona. Look at her nose. Look at her lips. If we just found evidence that her ancestors had nappy hair, and you know all the Indians were brown people, as mentioned not only in the Cora question, but in the 1828 Webster's definition of Indian, don't these traits collectively make Indians Negroes? NPR reported 5 days before Christmas that the Lumbee have just now received federal recognition despite having had a disputed identity for many generations. One look at them and you can see why they had such a hard time getting recognized. Lots of Negroid traits in the room. A little over a century ago, their disputed identity earned them state recognition as the so-called Cherokee Indians of Robeson County, North Carolina, according to the United Indian Nations of Oklahoma. Quote, 1913, the North Carolina legislature passed another bill that rebranded the Lumbee as the Cherokee Indians of Robeson County and sought federal recognition under this name despite lacking any genealogical, cultural, or linguistic ties to the Cherokee Nation. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians strongly opposed this move. U.S. Senate Committee on Indian Affairs, 1914 hearings, end quote. Eastern Band Cherokee were offended because the Cherokee, perhaps more than any other tribe in the U.S., invested blood, sweat, and tears into developing their proximity to whiteness. Association with the Lumbee threatened to set them back a century and a half. Verifying whether or not the Lumbee claim to being a Cherokee band is legitimate is complicated, but they definitely both come from ancestors of Negroid features. One of the most historic Cherokee surnames is BUSHYHEAD. Family Search says the name comes, quote, from a personal name which originated in English or was translated from Cherokee into English as a nickname for a person with bushy hair. This could easily describe a Negro curl pattern. The earliest confirmed Cherokee said to bear this name was Jesse Bushyhead. But the Cherokee have unverifiable lore that attempts to link the name to Jesse's Scottish ancestor who allegedly had very curly hair. They don't actually know that that's true. And that's pure conjecture dating back to the Indian removal era, a time when the Cherokee were doing everything they could to prove to the U.S. government that they were as European as the colonizer. Quote, one of the first bearers of the surname Bushyhead was Jesse Bushyhead, 1804 to 1844, a Cherokee religious and political leader. He is believed to be a grandson of the Scotsman John Stuart, believed to be a descendant of the Scotsman John Stuart, a British royal superintendent of Indian affairs from 1761 to 1779, to whom the nickname Bushyhead was supposedly first applied and later passed as a personal name to his Cherokee son, a father of Jesse Bushyhead and his siblings, end quote. They say supposedly and believed to be because historians haven't found anything to corroborate this claim that that's where it comes from. And the claim doesn't date back to John Stuart's actual lifetime, which would have been in the 1700s. There's ample room here to suspect that the Cherokee are actually just grasping at Scottish straws to avoid the stigma of their full-blood phenotype, which included the fro.
Guys, what we're about to talk about is a game changer. In short, Unehiya is a small team of highly capable individuals trying to lobby Congress for federal recognition of Black Americans as pre-Columbian American Indians. I'm one of them. I'm the public information officer, so I'm out front recruiting and providing information. I'm also handling PR because of my background in print journalism. Right now, we're focused on a well-planned lobbying campaign to get the Negro recognized as the American Indian, and our campaign strategy hinges on exploiting a quasi-legal precedent in an amendment proposal for a dormant Senate resolution that already exists. I want to appeal to everyone watching this video to support the campaign by joining Unehiya. And guess what? You don't even have to know a single thing about politics or history. Just help us build our list of demands and help each other use Unehiya's genealogy tools to identify your ancestral tribes. Vote yes or no on the hundreds of decisions we have to make. Participate in our tribal town hall meetings after every new moon. Look, I'm not asking for super chats or any other donations to my own pocket. If you've got any spare change, use it to become a stakeholder in Unehiya, which can be done for as little as $7. You can opt into stakeholder leadership for about $20 if you've got the budget for it, which gives you greater voting power on the decisions we make as a tribe. Believe it or not, it only takes 5 minutes to help us reclassify ourselves as Indians. Let's go!
You're looking at a group of Choctaw Indians at a powwow. This photo was shared by the next commenter on Quora, and ironically, he or she's trying to disprove everything we're talking about here. However, he or she contradicts self in the same in the process by actually, proving it further, proving our point further. This commenter goes by the screen name Morningstar. Based on that and the nature of his or her response, I deduce that this might be a Sioux Indian talking, Lakota perhaps. In Lakota tradition, the morning star is Venus, which used to live as a shaman among the first humans, and now challenges the power of both the sun and moon because it gained so much wisdom from living a human life. He or she is now remembered as an 8-point star on quilts from the Lakota and Cheyenne, according to the International Quilt Museum. 4 points signify the cardinal directions, north, south, east, west, and the other 4 stand for the 4 stages of life: infant, child, adult, elder. So remember, the question was, why did Choctaw look like Negroes in the 1800s? Morningstar says, quote, they didn't. Although, nowadays, There's a black-centric cultish movement to reinvent their own origin story, and they try to usurp the identity of Native Americans. Of course, they are particularly focused on the ancient tribes in the Southeast because the majority of Africans were enslaved in the American Southeast, where these tribes were located or had been located before removal. End quote. So, Morningstar says Choctaw didn't look like Negroes, and he or she makes a valid point about the fact that we focus a lot on the tribes of the Southeast because we as Black Americans largely trace our own ancestry back to the Southeast. It's unlikely that this is just a coincidence. The fact that the slave trade primarily concentrated slaves in the Southeast, and most of our evidence of Indian ancestry comes through Southeastern tribes. But is that because we were brought to the southeastern U.S. from Africa, or because the southeastern tribes did a better job of resisting assimilation? Either way, that's why he or she views us as cultish. That's going to be a major focal point in my presentation on the origins of the colored population in the U.S. Next, Morningstar writes, quote, "Another reason for claiming Choctaw specifically is because sometimes Muskogean people could be rather dark, and some individuals might have pronounced lips and wider noses, although this can be highly variable." End quote. Here's the thing. Morningstar originally said Choctaw didn't look like Negroes, but now he or she says Muskogean peoples, which would be the entire Creek Indian Society, as well as the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminoles, Yamasee, and Yuchi. This entire society, these people were often rather dark, with thick lips and wide noses. That's a Negro description for sure. All that's missing is the coarse hair texture. But we've already read a comment from someone saying they had to check a Choctaw woman's hair to make sure it wasn't nappy to determine whether she was Negro or not. Indians must have looked a lot like Negroes if you have to check that thoroughly to tell the difference. So yeah, they did look like Negroes. Morningstar continues, quote, "Then they highlight modern Choctaw members, they meaning us, referring to us, the cultish people who keep talking about being Black Indians. Then they highlight modern Choctaw members that are mixed with European ancestry and claim they are imposters." End quote. So this is the predatory nature of cults. From their perspective, we appear to be attacking Native identity. Let the record show. I never claim that Native Americans are imposters. I simply point out that they're all mixed and that they're more European than Indian at this point. I definitely see plenty of people in this content niche on YouTube deliberately attacking Native Americans, though. Morningstar acknowledges this reality by referencing Choctaw, who are mixed with European ancestry, but Morningstar does not acknowledge how many of them are mixed. It's all of them, including the ones whose blood quantum says full blood. Full blood quantum only means both your paternal and maternal bloodlines exclusively include people enrolled into the tribal rolls of the early 1900s. But those original enrollees were already mixed anyway. I've explained this in previous presentations. Listen, there's nothing wrong with being mixed, but the problem comes when people identify by a minor, fractional part of who they are and ignore the part that accounts for more than half of their ancestry. I've mentioned in previous presentations the Ichiti principle of erasure. To mix is self-conquest. To mix is self-conquest. Black people today make the mistake of identifying by our African ancestry, which more than likely accounts for no more than a quarter of our ancestry at most. We should be identifying as Indians because we collectively and individually are most likely more than half Indian. Likewise, many Native Americans should be identifying as Euro-Americans because they're more than half European. You are what you are most of. You are what you are most of. Understanding this is critical to keeping Haida, which is the family of families of existence. I've explained all this before, but we'll revisit it in the future. On Reddit, there's a thread entitled "Most French colonist marriages in 18th century US were with Indians." Several commenters speak from personal experience, and one goes by the screen name "Oh My God, Gina." He or she writes, quote, "I'm a product of 400 years of French/native marriages." So back to the 1600s, this person is saying. That means they started mixing super early. From what I understand of my family's records, it was almost always a case of a French fur trader marrying my Ojibwe grandmothers. Their children were almost always considered Ojibwe. Catch that part. They were almost always considered Ojibwe and had both Anglo and native names. It wasn't until really around the mid-19th century that the children began identifying as either Métis or French. I do have records from this time where some of my ancestors identify as French, Ojibwe, and Métis. However, today we only identify as Ojibwe. So even though they have all this mixed ancestry, even though they have all that European ancestry, they're just identifying as Ojibwe. And notice, the commenter said that originally they were always considered Ojibwe, even though they were mixed as well. Why? Because that's the one-drop rule. The one-drop rule applied to Indians. You're still being considered Indian because you have a drop of Indian blood. And therein lies the problem. It's not that we deny your Indian blood, but if both we as Black Americans and you as Native Americans do our research together, we will see that you are less than half indigenous. I, on the other hand, would have to be more than half indigenous because there simply weren't enough Africans brought here for me to be predominantly African. The only reason I'm viewed as African is because everyone believes Black people originate from a single continent. Jack D. Forbes considered ancient American Indians to be the descendants, whether partly or entirely, of prehistoric Africans for that same reason. It's simply because of all the evidence he uncovered to suggest that the American Indians were indeed Black. What everyone's missing is a point that I've mentioned on this channel several times, which is that ancient Asia was Black too. In future presentations, I'll demonstrate how we can confirm this, but I'm trying to get more people to consider the possibility that Black Americans are actually American Indians whose prehistoric ancestors were in both Asia and the Americas simultaneously, migrating back and forth constantly. That's why everyone's so confused about this. Native Americans rarely admit how confused they are on this subject. But here's an example of their own confusion. Make of it what you will.
All a lie. Everything we've been taught in the American education system is all a lie. Yes, Native Americans weren't the original people of this land. We actually took it from Black people. We were so good at it that we just wiped out any trace of their language and their culture. Well,